So in my going from there over to here, from the sanctuary, or from the parish hall over to here, have mislaid my sermons somewhere, which is okay, right? Because that's life. Get on. So it's so wonderful to be here and to see all of you, and I miss you terribly. And I know that some of you, a verger. Some of you have had to be packing in preparation to possibly have to evacuate your homes. I know this didn't happen for many of you, but for anyone over in Carmel Valley, that has been the case. And that, that's a terrible thing, because you can only take so much, right? So you have to decide what's really essential and what's not. And our gospel really speaks to that this morning, doesn't it? It's just so often the readings and life happen, and they really speak to one another. And I think the core of the gospel reading this morning is that relationships are what's important. The things that are truly valuable are those that enhance and give support and life to relationships. And beyond that, it's okay to let it go. It's a tragedy, but you can let it go. It's relationships that are at the core of our lives. So I'm not going to go with the gospel, though. I want to go with Hosea, because in Hosea we see relationships being lifted up, not versus things, which is what we see in the gospel, relationship versus things. But in Hosea we see relationship versus rant. And because there's so much ranting in our society right now, I want to talk about that. Talk about Hosea. So that's where we're going. Just a little bit of background, though, to step back, to let you know where I've been, what I've been doing. I've been mostly with grandbabies. I've spent 2 weeks just immersed in grandbabies. And talk about relationship. They are all about faces, faces being with you, like they want to be engaged all the time, which is tiring, but wonderful. And then I've spent a week up in a canyon in Central California, near Cuyama, which is in about an hour inland from Santa Maria. So think kind of 3,000-foot desert, very hot, very dry. The smoke from both the Sobranos fire and the Southern California fires kind of meet there and just hang in the haze. So I don't know about all of you, but allergies and sinuses are in bad shape right now, right? And there I was with a friend from seminary, and I was immersed in the Gospel of Matthew, and she was immersed in writing a book that she's working on. So that's where I've been, and you all have been with fire trucks and trying to figure out what you need to keep if you need to evacuate. So it's good to be here. So I've got a question for you before we dive into Hosea, and it is this. Have you ever been so upset that you just wanted to kind of go out and kick, you know what? I mean, you were just ready to do it. Get out there and make some action happen. And then you kind of came to yourself and you said, well, wait a minute. That's not really it's not really who I am. It's not really what I want to do. And you kind of rethought it, and you simmered down, and you decided on a different course of action. A course of action that would actually be a whole lot better in the long run. Have you ever done that? Right? I'm guessing that some of us could tell actually embarrassing stories about what we were ready to do. My next question is this. Have you ever stopped job of just taking stock of your life. You know, yourself, your life. Maybe you decided you needed to start doing something that you weren't doing now, or you needed to stop doing something that you needed to stop doing in order to be your best self. Anybody have that experience? Kind of take stock and say, okay, this direction isn't really serving me anymore. I need to do this because this is a better route for me. And my best self can emerge. We don't normally think about God doing this. We don't normally think of God being kind of self-reflective and critical. But in the Hosea reading, we see this. We get a peek into the divine life. And that's why I want to talk about it. Because that is a privileged peek into the divine life that Hosea is giving us here. So as I mentioned, this reading is from 800 years before Jesus was born. It's so poignant. I mean, anyone who has raised a child or watched a friend raise a child can relate to this reading. When Israel was a child, I loved him. And out of Egypt I called him, meaning out of slavery, I freed him. I taught Ephraim to walk. I took him up in my own arms. They didn't know that it was I who was healing them. I lifted him like an infant to my cheek. I mean, this is just really, really tender language. This is a father who dearly loves his child. And really, in the light of a very patriarchal society, it's truly amazingly tender. Lifting this baby child to his cheek. Sorry, I just saw Scott doing this. This is the picture of God with his child. The father supporting the little child, embraces of love, holding him close, stooping low to attend to him, feed him, kiss all of his boo-boos, attend to every flaw, every scar, every scab, every wound, and every fear. Helping him walk, which takes a lot of bending down. My 8-month-old grandson really, really wants to walk, but he can't yet on his own. So instead, he's convinced his mom and dad to walk with him, to hold him up as he walks. Now that is hard to do. And when he was with me, I think I've got two. Am I too mic? Is it okay? Okay. Well, when he was with me, on my back, I just couldn't take it. I mean, all this bending over, so he had to crawl when he was with me. So, clearly, I've just spent a lot of time with babies. I mean, there's nothing more munchable than baby thighs. more sweet than baby breath and baby hair. And even changing their diapers, it's not really a chore. And all those sleepless nights, they're hard. They're hard, no doubt about it. But I watch mommies and babies put their babies first before everything else, even when they can hardly put one foot in front of the other. It's adoration. And that's what God is talking about here. Adoration for the one whom he called and named as his own baby child, Ephraim. Of course, this is all metaphor, right? It's all metaphor for a developing people, a people that God has claimed and named as his very own. He's freed them from oppression and slavery in the Exodus and brought them out through the desert, forming them into a free people. These people are his family, his human family, and he loves them with the love of a parent. But from the very first, this son has been wayward. We might call him a bad baby. Refused the father by acting out other loyalties. He never really gets the hang of being that loved, that secure, that cared for. And he grows up to be a rebellious teenager, unruly, prone to running away, and refusing his father's help. In the text today, he's rebelled by seeking military alliances with Assyria and with Egypt, where he has been enslaved. Egypt, the oppressor. He's now in military alliance. And the result is that this whole whole society has been consumed by militarism. The sword rages in their cities. It consumes their priests. It devours because of their schemes. Over and over again, this firstborn son has rejected life-giving relationship with his father. And finally, his father is exhausted trying to care for this son who is determined to have his own way. And so the father goes into a rant that any parent with teenage children can understand. He is going to lead this boy to the consequences of his own bad choices. He says, "My people are bent on turning away from me. To the Most High they call, but he does not raise them up at all. He doesn't raise them up at all. They shall return to the land of Assyria. Egypt shall be their enslaver, because they refuse to return to me." But in the very next breath, he says, how can I get them back? How can I hand you over, O Israel? He goes from this rant to this, wait a minute, who am I? He can't stand his own rant. He can't stand actually about his own child. So we get this poetry of self-reflection. How can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand you over, Israel? How can I make you like Admah, which is Gomorrah? How can I treat you like Zeboim, which is Sodom? My heart recoils within me. My compassion grows warm and tender. I will not execute my fierce anger. I will not again destroy Ephraim. For I am God. I am God. I am no mortal. I am the Holy One in your midst, and I will not come in wrath. Now, rants feel good. Anybody been part of a rant? They feel good, right? I mean, you get it off your chest, like... Okay, so just a side story, but when I was up in this canyon above Kuyama, all the talk there is around water. Who has it, who doesn't have it, and who's trying to take it. And there is a huge vineyard going in, being planted by... Okay, so to these people, Harvard is like the enemy. And Harvard has these investors. And they have invested in this big vineyard, right? So they've planted this big vineyard. They're drilling a lot of wells in order to sustain this big vineyard. And the people up in the canyons are mad because they're concerned, of course, that their water will get drained down. And so, boy, there are rants, let me tell you. There are rants up in the mountains. So rants feel good, but they don't do much. And in this passage from Hosea, we get to see a recalibration right in the middle of the rant. The father catches himself up short and says, wait a minute, to himself. He says, what are you doing? Who are you? Because this rage isn't who I am. I am a father who is warm. I have tender compassion. That's who I am. I'm God. I'm not some macho guy that just emotes in destructiveness. I'm the Holy One. And I can and I will turn this ordinary rage into viable relationship. I will do this because this is who I am. In other words, the Father comes to himself. Now we have that phrase, coming to himself, in the parable of the prodigal son. Remember the prodigal son? He's run off and he's in the midst of all the mess he's made of his life, and he comes to himself and he says, I'm going to go back home. Here we have God coming to himself and saying, I'm going to be who I really am. And I'm going to prepare a homecoming for this wayward child. When they finally get it together and come home trembling, I will make a homecoming. They shall come trembling like birds from Egypt and like doves from the land of Assyria, and I will return them to their homes. So my question is, what would it mean? What would it mean for us to be made in the image of this God? What does it require for us to imitate this God in our own life? And like we said at the beginning, actually most of us, all of us, have had this experience, this self-critical assessment of our inner life, right? We've had this experience of coming to ourselves, of saying to ourselves, hold on here, this isn't who I am, and changing course. But I want to hold up this ability to observe our thoughts, observe our feelings, observe our reactions from a still point, from a self-critical distance. Because this is really, really important. We hear all around us very, very public emoting, right? I mean, there really doesn't seem to be any limits. There's nothing off limits at this point, to say out loud. And somehow, the way we speak to one another escalates so quickly from just having differences into ideological absolutes. And so we're concretizing, we're on this side and that side, and we've lost the ability to just speak to one another through and across and with our differences. So we hear all-out rants by very public figures that make the other, whether the other is Mexican or Muslim or the poor or the privileged or the police, rants that make the other into a target for assault. But self-discipline and self-restraint and the ability to be self-critical are so needed, and they are so sorely lacking. One of the first things that my spiritual director taught me years ago was to establish what she called the observing self. That is, the self that could observe my own thoughts and my feelings without necessarily believing them. Right? In other words, she taught me to maintain a kind of self-critical distance from my own noise. And here's the truth. Without distance from our own noise, we become pawns of our own egos and our own emotions. And we become pawns of those around us. In other words, we just become reacting, always reacting to what you said, or to what I think you said, or to what I imagined you said. Reactive to my feelings about what I think you said. We give up our freedom. We have no freedom. We're returned to Egypt. We are enslaved. But in this reading from Hosea, we see ultimate freedom. This father would be well within his rights to walk away from his people, who have been so sorely and thoroughly insulting, who have thumbed their nose at him. But he rethinks his own response, his own reaction, and not based on any change by the people, but simply by coming to himself, by re-identifying who he is, the Holy One of Israel, the Holy One of his people, the father of this wayward son. He chooses relationship over rant. So this ability to self-observe, to self-critique that we see lifted up by the divine in this reading, this ability to choose over and over again who we want to be in spite of provocation to be our lowest selves. This ability is critical to our development as full, mature human beings, whole human beings. And it's essential to our spiritual maturity as Christians. We want to be true to our Christian faith, which will sometimes be a costly allegiance. That depends on our ability to have internal integrity and freedom and discipline. And if we've not developed the ability to be self-reflective, then we cannot take stands which may not be popular, but that are godly. And this ability to be self-critical, it's necessary for a democracy. Old Testament scholar Walter Brueggemann points out in his excellent commentary on this text, he says, the absence of the capacity for self-criticism makes democracy almost impossible. For democracy depends upon a critical, knowing citizenry, capable of more than reactive responses. The dominant world in which we live, Bergerman says, is a public that is largely lacking in those who have come to themselves. And too much religion, he says, features a God who never comes to himself, who continues to rant and forget that he is the Holy One of Israel, the tender Father of all. Thankfully, we have the Scriptures, continuing witness of Scripture to recalibrate us, to move us over and over again from the feel-good rant to the hard work and the eternal rewards of relationship. Amen.